Welcome to the Health Science Coach Podcast. My name is Drew Garner. I am a health science and physical education teacher here at Turner High School. My objective is to provide information to students about different healthcare careers and explain how these professionals got to where they are in their careers. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's dig in. Today we get the pleasure of meeting with Ciera Ayala. She is a registered nurse in pediatrics at Children's Mercy in Kansas City. And she is also a graduate of Turner High School class of 2017. Good morning, Ciera. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you went to Turner High School, you graduated in 2017. We kind of were talking a little bit before recording. And now you are, 5 years later, you are a pediatric nurse at Children's Mercy. That's pretty cool to be able to see that process and development.
Most definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about what a pediatric nurse does. What is a pediatric nurse?
Yeah, good question. So a pediatric nurse, it's a pretty specialized group of nursing because you go to pediatric nursing, but then in the hospital there are different specialties within that. So Children's Mercy has a cardiology unit. They have a hematology unit, which is cancer. And then, they have pretty much every organ system, kidneys, liver. And I specifically work with cardiology kiddos, but you take care of kids as young as just a couple of days old, all the way up until 18 years old, sometimes even a little bit older, depending on, if they're a long-time patient with us. We'll go ahead and keep taking care of them into adulthood. So yeah, that's what pediatric nursing is. It's pretty different from adult nursing because with adult nursing, you just kind of have the different acuities most of the time, whether it be intensive care or just like medical or surgical. But cardiology, there's like multiple specialties within it.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then, so on a day-to-day basis, so your schedule is 3 days a week, 12. What does that daily schedule kind of look like? So you wake up and get to work. What does that process of the day look like?
Yeah, so whenever you get to work, that's whenever you learn what kind of patients you're taking care of, what rooms you have, and then you'll get report for me, it will be the day shift nurse because I'm night shift. So I'll get report from the day shift nurse. They'll tell me about the patient, kind of how the day went and any progress we've made. And from there, it's just doing your tasks such as giving medications, monitoring, their vitals and any tasks that need done, nursing tasks such as putting in IVs or tubes to help them eat. And then from there, it's pretty slow during night shift, so I can really only speak for night shift for the most part. But it's just a lot of monitoring, and if any changes happen, advocating for them for what you think needs done to help improve their health or help improve their condition. So a lot of communicating with doctors throughout the night. And really, it's just kind of seeing what you can do to help them and get them through the night.
Yeah. So on a typical day, how many patients are you, charts are you looking over within your floor?
It's 2 to 3 usually, and sometimes 4, which is really, if you talk to any other nurses, it's really generous because the adult hospitals, especially with COVID going on, they're sometimes taking care of between 6 and 8 patients. Cardiology, yes, but even pediatrics, it's just a really special group that requiring more than 4 kids to take care of is a little much. So yeah, usually between 2 and 3.
Okay. Yeah, that seems pretty manageable, especially overnight.
Yeah.
Generally, most of the time when a patient's in there and during the night, are you seeing a lot of these kiddos? Are they sleeping, or what kind of needs are they having throughout the evening?
It really just kind of depends first of all, how long they're there and then their age. If they're pretty much over the age of 3, you get them settled in for the evening. You give them their nighttime meds, which usually is between 8 and 9 o'clock. And then you just get them settled in. And so you assess them and take their vital signs at 8 o'clock, at midnight, and then at 4 a.m. So sometimes sleeping gets a little hard whenever you're waking them up at 4 a.m., even at midnight. But the longer you're there, sometimes you end up inverting your sleep schedule a little bit. So we have babies who get their days and nights mixed up because they just don't know the difference because of how long they've been there. So they can sometimes have meds at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. So most of the time it's just giving meds and doing assessments unless other things pop up along the way.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you studied your undergraduate at University of Kansas, Missouri, and you got your bachelor's in science and nursing. Let's kind of talk about your application process or thought process from high school into college and how you kind of chose KC.
So for starters, I chose UMKC because the guidance counselor at Turner introduced me to the trustee scholarship. And basically what that got me is a completely paid for 4-year full ride to college. And so that was what mainly drew me to Kansas or to UMKC. I also really didn't have a huge desire to go too far. So that was another aspect of it. And then looking at their nursing program, it has a lot of benefits to it as well. When you think about nursing schools, most of them are just a 2-year program. So you spend half of your college doing general education and prerequisites, and then only 2 years of nursing school. It's 4 semesters. It's not really too much. UMKC actually has a 3-year nursing program where you do over 1,200 clinical hours. So it's a ton. So I went out into the nursing field, I think, pretty prepared. So those are one of the many things I looked at when choosing UMKC.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had told me earlier that after you completed your first year, you were able to work as a CNA.
Yes.
Talk about how that program is set up and works for you.
Yes. So for me personally, so UMKC, you can choose to do your nursing degree in 4 years or 5 years. So you either do just your 1 year of gen eds and prereqs and go straight into nursing school, or do the 2 years and then 3 years of nursing school. So I did my first year of prereqs, so that would have been in 2017 and then spring of 2018. And then in fall of 2018, I went into nursing school. And I did my first rotation, and it's called fundamentals. You kind of learn your basics of patient care, how to take vital signs, stuff like that. And at that point, you've basically learned what you need to know to work at a hospital as a CNA. And most hospitals have a different term for these nursing students, whether it's called a nurse intern or a nurse tech. They're a separate role from the CNA, but they do the same, they function as the same thing. So it's a way to get into the field and get your foot in the door while gaining experience, but they're also really understanding of your nursing school schedule as well, because it's also really insane.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of gets you the in-field experience of being able to work at the hospital while you're in school, learning about different types of stuff for nursing.
Yes.
Just getting that real world experience. I think that's pretty cool to be able to do. Now, where did you do that experience at?
So I did 1 year at Overland Park Regional Medical Center, and that was on their just medical surgical floor with adults. And I worked, like I said, I worked there for about a year. And at that point, I have known for a while that I wanted to work with pediatrics. So that was just to get my experience, because Children's Mercy does require some experience. And then I was able to transition over to Children's Mercy. But during the pandemic, Children's Mercy had a lot of furloughs. So I was furloughed from them for about, I think, 3 months. So I went and worked at KU in an ICU. So I've kind of got a wide range of experience, which is the cool thing about doing that kind of thing while you're in nursing school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty interesting. So you went straight from working back as a CNA at Children's Mercy. Once you graduated and finished your 3 years of nursing school at university, you were able to get hired on as a full-time pediatric nurse. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that process look once you were getting ready to graduate and starting to look for your first job?
So you actually start applying pretty early. So I graduated in May of 2021, so just a few short months ago, but I was applying for jobs. I was looking at jobs about a year ago. And then you start applying the December before you graduate. So I was applying for jobs in December of 2020. From there, you get a bunch of calls depending on, I knew where I wanted to work and I already had like, my foot in the door. So I didn't have to apply very many places. But if you have kind of an open mind, you apply to 4 or 5 different hospitals. And then they call you back for an interview and you interview. Usually it's in January, February. They'll sometimes interview you in that December month, but most of the time it's at the beginning of the year. And from there you get calls back. Usually in February or March, regarding your job position. And then you usually don't start until June or July, once you get your degree and take your boards and everything. So it's a pretty long process. It's about a 6-7 month process from the time you put in your first application to when you're walking on the floor as a nurse.
Okay. So speaking of boards, a lot of people talk about, having to take their certification tests. Let's talk a little bit about what the boards are and, what it cover for nursing.
So the boards for nursing, it's called the NCLEXRN. So essentially what that is so whenever you graduate, you get your degree. For lack of a better way to put it, your degree means nothing unless you have your license.
Right.
So your degree is basically just your ticket to take your test. So
Not
you get,
classes, right?
yeah. So you take this test, and it basically can have everything that you've learned over the past, for me, what was 3 years on it. And it's called a computerized adaptive test. It used to be anywhere from a minimum of 75 questions to 235 questions maximum. Now that the pandemic has come, they've shortened it. So it's a minimum of 75 questions to 135 maximum. And so basically, the more questions you get right, the harder the test gets. And once you consistently meet the benchmark that they have established that shows that you are safe to practice as a nurse, it shuts off. And then from there, you have to wait X amount of days to get your results. And you basically hear nothing. So mine shut off right at 75. So I hit that minimum of 75 questions and it shut off. And I didn't know that I passed for another 2 days. It was the toughest 2 days of my life.
Absolutely. I had a similar experience. I had my admin test, and ours was a 6-week waiting test.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was checking the website constantly, looking to see that. So already having a job, I was already doing what I was doing, but I could only imagine, just graduating, taking your test, and not knowing for a couple days if you're able to start practicing at the nursery or not.
Exactly.
Interesting. So how did you choose, you said earlier, you kind of already knew that you wanted to be in pediatrics. What made you lead to that kind of decision of wanting to be a pediatric nurse from the beginning?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to be a nurse. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. Just by exposure, my mom was a nurse, and so I saw what she did and I liked it. So it just was an idea that floated around in my mind. But I had my niece who was born in 2018, and she was born with Down syndrome, and a lot of Down syndrome babies are born with these subsequent heart defects. We see a lot of them on my floor. So I spent a lot of time actually on the floor that I work on now with her. For the first year of her life, she spent a good majority of the first year of her life in the hospital, just dealing with failure to thrive and just not gaining weight because of her heart issues. So she was there pretty much up until her heart surgery and then a little bit after. And just seeing what they did and the relationships they made with my sister and myself, I really liked what they did, and it really drove me to want to do exactly what they were doing.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool. What is something that you absolutely love about your job?
I love the population. I always tell myself, and this is just a 100%, this is opinion based, that if I had to work with any other population besides pediatrics, I'd be pretty lost. It's just such a unique population where you get to care for the kids, and you just get so many different ages where you're snuggling the little babies or you're communicating with somebody who is just a few years younger than you, for me personally.
Right.
And hearing, just everything they've been through from such a young age. And with the cardiology unit specifically, a lot of them spend a lot of time there. I mean, I've had kids spend the first 14 months of their lives there. So just seeing them grow up and become better and go home, and then creating the relationships with the families too, where you see them 3 days a week and they just start to get to know you. I really value those relationships that you have with those patients. I feel like I've worked with other different populations and you just don't get that with that type.
Right. Yeah, I feel that that's pretty rewarding to be able to
Mm-hmm.
be a kid that is sick and wanting to, be able to talk and communicate with them as well as
Mm-hmm.
family, and seeing that bond between the kid and their own family members
Yeah.
throughout that time is pretty rewarding. What are some misconceptions you think that there may be about pediatric nurses?
So I thought about this one long and hard because I wanted to give a good answer. And so this might be a little spin on what most people say or what you're even looking for. A lot of people go into nursing. I just hear that they're like, oh, nurses make good money. I can't wait until I'm a nurse, make good money. Um, if you're going into nursing for that reason, I highly discourage it, to be blunt about it, because nurses do not make great money, especially for what we do, and what we have to deal with. Because I'm giving you the bright side of it because I really do like my job, but it isn't always that way. So with that being said, and well, let me add on to the pediatric nursing aspect. Children's Mercy is the only children's hospital in this area. And so that really has a lot to do with their pay rate because they're not really competing with anybody. So it's the hard truth, but I just highly discourage anybody that's going into nursing because they think they're going to make the big bucks. I discourage it because first of all, it's the wrong outlook to be going into nursing for, but I just thought I'd throw that out there because I do remember hearing that a lot when I was in high school.
Yeah, it all is kind of dependent on what good money is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you make
Yeah.
more money than a CNA, but you're also given that time of being able to, 3 days a week versus 5 or 7 days a week, which is pretty nice. And like you said, you work nights, so you're in there from 7 to 7. Is that correct?
Yeah, and really by the time everything's said and done, I mean, you're leaving your house at 6:15 p.m. and not getting home until 8 a.m. So it's quite the commitment. So like I said, to just be looking at it from a money aspect, it doesn't really align.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. What is something that you're most proud of? I mean, you said you started working a couple months ago. You've been in there now for 5 months or so. What is something that you're most proud of professionally so far?
I think so. Going into the nursing program, there's just a lot that has been happening. So I didn't have to apply for the nursing program due to my scholarship. So that was really big for me because as these future nursing students will learn, the application process is quite a big one. So I got to completely bypass that entire thing. And then just graduating in general is just a huge deal with nursing. Nursing school really is not easy. It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever gone through. So graduating in itself is huge accomplishment for me. And then I graduated with honors, so that was pretty cool. And then I think the biggest one is just coming out of college with no debt. So I really highly encourage students to look at those scholarships because I mean, I know nurses that I'm working with who are way older than me and who are still paying off debt. So I'm just really blessed to not have to worry about that even remotely.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really cool accomplishment, and being able to have that scholarship and win it is, I mean, that's a huge advantage to be able to be coming out of college with no debt and making
Yeah.
just your personal money. Is there anything that you regret not doing, maybe in high school or in college, that would have helped you now with your career?
Um, so kind of out of my control, this health science class that you have now is really cool, but I didn't have that going into college. So as we were talking about, I didn't know that you had to apply for nursing school. Whenever the time came, I was just absolutely lost. So I regret not having a little bit more insight. Even without the class, I think I could have done a little bit more research. So
Right.
just really doing your research and knowing what it's going to take from you and just being prepared ahead of time. And this was something that I ended up doing, the whole CNA aspect, not because I knew like the benefits it would have, but just because I needed a job. But even if you don't need a job and you're taken care of from that aspect, excuse me, I highly recommend working in a hospital as an intern or CNA or whatever your time allows you to do, because they will tell you that you can come out of nursing school without having any of that experience. But I personally couldn't imagine having to deal with everything I'm having to deal with now as a new graduate nurse and trying to acclimate to the hospital environment, having to learn, just all of the different things that go into working on the floor of a hospital. So I highly recommend, even if it's just your last semester, getting your foot in the door at a hospital somewhere, preferably somewhere you want to end up working in the long run, because it makes the interview process 100 times easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to do a shadow or looking into that kind of stuff at somewhere where you would want to work at would definitely be beneficial, I would think. Now, just graduating, you probably haven't had to look into professional development just quite yet. But with nursing, what are some of the things that, as a pediatric nurse, they've talked about for professional development to keep your license?
Right. Yeah. So, as far as keeping your license, there's not really much you have to do. I think you have to pay like a fee every year, and I think you're good to go from that aspect. But professional development in general, so this is one thing that has been pretty important to me, because as of right now, I don't really have a desire to go back to school to get like my master's or doctorate or anything like that. But I think it's really important for people to know that you don't have to do that to grow as far as nursing goes. You can, there's so many different things in the hospital that you can do. There's infection prevention, there's quality improvement, there's so many different things that you can do as a nurse without having to actually go back and get a second degree, which is something I'm just now learning and I definitely have a desire to do. So I just really think it's important for people to know that, because, some people do want to go back to school, but it's not for everybody. So definitely something I wish I would have known.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some industry trends that you've started to see, being just out of nursing school, having COVID, working in a job for 5 months? What are some of the industry trends that you've started to see dealing with pediatric nursing?
So this time, the times that we're in right now actually puts an interesting twist to that question, because the trends right now aren't great. There's just a lot of burnout. And I know that that's probably not what future, nursing students want to hear, but it's really important to know so that you know how to take care of yourself going into the career. There's just, COVID is very real and it's apparent in the hospitals, and we're just really taking a hit with hospitals being at max capacity and just extremely busy. And it's just really tiring. And then just the whole short staffed aspect as well. There's just a lot of people who are leaving the bedside sooner than anticipated. So with that being said, it's not to discourage anybody. It's just so that you're prepared and you have ways to take care of yourself, and you learn to leave work at work, so that when you're at home, you're just worrying about, yourself and taking care of yourself. But as far as industry trends, that's kind of where I stand with that. There's just a lot of burnout and everybody is short staffed and the hospitals are at max capacity.
Yeah. So a couple of break off questions off of that. Talked a little bit about self-care. What are some things that you see yourself or your friends that are nurses working with on self-care to kind of leave work at work and be able to do what you want during your time, but also, be able to relax and that kind of stuff? What are some things that you guys do for self-care?
One thing I personally do, and this is as far as work, like actual on the, during my shift goes, if I have a hard shift and it just is heavy on my mind as I'm leaving, I will go and debrief with my manager, and just make sure that there's like nothing I could have done better or just ways to improve. And that kind of helps from the aspect of leaving work at work, because I'll talk about it with her before I go, and then I'll leave knowing, hey, this is what I can do better next time, or I did absolutely everything I could.
Yeah.
And then when I get home, just finding a hobby. I have 2 dogs that I absolutely adore, so I make a point to spend some time with them and take them out on walks every day or play with them outside, or finding a hobby. I've really gotten into reading now that I'm not forced to, that I'm in school. So I find good books that I like, hanging out with friends, just something other than work and then home. You just have to find other things to do, because it can be pretty tiring on yourself mentally and physically.
Yeah, absolutely. So being a nurse now for 5 months,
Mm-hmm.
getting your feet wet a little bit, what are some of your career goals that you have set for yourself, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years?
Mm-hmm. So we talked about leadership a little bit. I do want to get used to the whole bedside aspect of nursing, and that takes however long it takes you. I anticipate working in bedside probably for the next seven years or so, just to get good at what I'm doing, and then from there, I just want to find some kind of leadership position. At that point, if I do choose to go back to school, then I'll follow that route and
Right.
find leadership position through that. But I definitely want to stay in pediatrics and just find somewhere to grow, whether it be in cardiology still, or I've talked about, the quality improvement aspect, and then the education aspect as well. If I can get involved in that too. I like educating people, like younger, whether it be new graduates or nursing students. I really like that aspect of nursing too. So hopefully I can get involved in something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty cool. So kind of bouncing off of that, we talked a little bit about um, what you wish you would have known in high school about applying for schools,
Mm-hmm.
for nursing schools. What's something that you wish you might have done other than application wise in high school? I know that you were a good student here at Turner, and
Mm-hmm.
took academics pretty seriously. Being able to earn that free tuition scholarship for
Mm-hmm.
UMK was a huge part of that. What's something that you would recommend to current high school or maybe early college age students that are interested in nursing about, maybe getting involved in clubs or organizations, stuff like that?
So definitely look at all of your different options as far as nursing schools go. There, a lot of people get discouraged whenever, they don't get accepted into A school or B school. Apply to a lot of different schools. It really increases your chances of getting in. So that's one thing I highly recommend. And then as far as clubs go, this would be more so for like the early college student going into your freshman year. Definitely get involved in those. They kind of a lot of the times will pair you with a mentor, and I remember getting paired with a mentor who was a senior in the nursing program, and so just getting insight from them was really helpful. All schools have an SNA, which is the Student Nurses Association,
Right.
and I definitely recommend getting involved in that. I just value so much in those organizations. They help you out with a lot. So getting involved in any kind of like healthcare or nursing clubs that you can fresh out of high school is super important.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's a product, like thinking about being a nurse, other than
Mhm.
maybe an otoscope or a stethoscope? What's a product that you use on a daily basis that helps you with your job duties?
You mentioned stethoscope. That one's important. Um, I would say maybe a pair of shoes, because a lot of people don't think about your shoes and they'll buy the cheapest ones possible. But I mean, I'm 22 years old and I have incredible back and neck and feet problems because I didn't take the high route as far as shoe shopping goes. So definitely taking care of yourself when it comes to that kind of stuff will lead to less complications in the future, I highly recommend spending a solid amount of money on some shoes.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's a good one. So this is a two-part question, and we only have a couple more left. Two-part question. If you dislike blank, then being a nurse is not the right career path for you. So our athletic trainer here at the high school, Lynn, that you're familiar with, her answer to this was being an athletic trainer. If you dislike feet, then being an athletic trainer is not for you. So being a pediatric nurse, if you dislike blank, then being a pediatric nurse is not the right career path for you.
I could take a couple different turns with this. I would say fast-paced environment, which I'm sure a lot of people going into nursing are well aware of the fast pace. It can go, there's some times where I'll be sitting down for 2 hours straight because I'm just kind of chilling out and there's not really much to do. And then all of a sudden things might go south and I have to be on my feet and going. And leading with that, the unpredictability aspect as well. So just being unpredictable. You'll see your 2 or 3 patients and you're like, oh, okay, sorry, I need to go plug my phone in. This is going to be a pretty chill night. And then, a lot of the times when you think that to yourself, that turns out not quite being the case.
Right.
And then another thing I want to add to that is if you don't like learning, I would say that probably nursing isn't the best aspect for you, which I would assume that people going into the nursing field like learning because you really are just a long-term student when it comes to nursing. Nurses take classes every year, whether it be CPR recertification or pediatric advanced learning. There's just a lot of different classes that you take pretty much for the rest of your life while you're a nurse. So I would say if you don't like that education aspect as well.
That's awesome. And then the second part of that is if you do like blank, then being a pediatric nurse is the right career path to you.
Well, for starters, kids, if you like kids, because that's what you're working with. But if you like making a difference, and that goes with all of nursing, a lot of, you do have your bad days, but a lot of the times you just see the difference you make. You'll come back the next night and have your same set of patients and you'll see improvements from the night before. And, I can actually feel that in my heart whenever I come back and their improvement, or even they went home, it just feels really good. So if you like making a difference, and of course, the cliche helping others, that's definitely, nursing is definitely for you. And then also, if you like getting your hands dirty, we deal with a lot of interesting fluids, so throw that aspect in there too.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And then the last question I have is, do you have a mantra or quote that kind of helps you get through your days as being a pediatric nurse?
I don't have a distinct quote, but just a lot of people in the nursing field tell you that we're human and we make mistakes. Whenever going into the nursing field, just 3 short months ago, 4 months, I was very scared of even making the smallest mistake because in nursing school, there's the mentality that you can't make mistakes at all. But I'm starting to learn just from my peers that you're human and, you will make mistakes. And it's just important that, you did your best work and you most importantly learn from that mistake. So yeah, like I said, not a distinct quote, but just that's something that I live by, is that we're all human, and if I make a little mistake, it's okay. Something I struggle with. I hate making mistakes, so I've had to really learn on that quote.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be very scary, making a mistake, being in charge of the care of pediatric kids and making sure that they're in a safe environment. Little mistakes, yeah, but like you said, being scared that you're going to do something that could really severely hurt somebody it'd be a pretty nerve-wracking thing to deal with. Well, thank you so much for spending 30 minutes with us. This was really beneficial, and I'd love to be able to get kids in contact with you if they have any questions. We'll be sharing this with our class and with everybody else a week or so. So just want to thank you again for ahead of time, and we really appreciated it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.